Hello, I'm Adam and I'm here to talk to you today about economics. Not as I did before with all the charts and the very technical explanations, but today I just wanted to talk in general about the concept of economics and cover a few things, basically where I think the United States is going unbelievably wrong economically right now and the root causes of it. And basically, as many of you know, that the United States is running massive deficits and racking up massive national debt at the same time to the tune of about $1 trillion every year, more than that actually, 1.3, 1.4 trillion every year right now, and that's going to continue for the foreseeable future, unless we have massive entitlement reform and embark on a pro-growth agenda, which we're not doing right now. Basically what we're doing is a complete demand-side agenda, demand-side economics and redistributionist economics. That's the goal and policies of our government right now, the Obama administration. They're not pro-growth economics, they're demand-side economics and redistributionist economics. And that has led to a non-recovery basically from the recession of 2008 and 2009. And basically the United States is going bankrupt. As I would say, all of the bloated welfare states of the late 20th century are going bankrupt. We're seeing it now in the so-called pig nations, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. But those are just the beginning. It's the United States is only a year or two behind. And unlike those countries, there's going to be no bailout. There's going to be nobody to rush in with dollars and try and patch a hole in the ship. So it'll happen very quickly, basically when the bond market blows up. That'll determine when we're at the end of the line, because you'll see it happen very quickly that interest rate starts to rise, and not only will our borrowing costs increase for new debt, but when we try to roll over the old debt, when those bonds mature, not able to pay them off, we have to borrow more money to refinance the old debt, plus adding new debt. You're going to see interest rates rise, and basically we'll have to have a very rapid and massive, instantaneous slashing of the budget. And that will cause a massive recession, because as you slash the budget rapidly instead of doing it in a controlled way with reforms, then you're going to see chaos. Basically, you're going to see they're going to resort to printing money and hyperinflation. They're already printing money, as I'm about to show. And again, the United States is in the process now of going bankrupt. We're reaching the end of the line. We owe basically an entire year's worth of GDP, our entire economy, for 1 year to pay off just what we owe now. And we have to pay interest on that regardless of what interest rates are. We have fixed rates now, but a lot of that debt is short-term debt. And as interest rates go higher, we're going to have to refinance all that debt at higher rates, plus borrow new debt at higher rates. And so the United States is in the process now of going bankrupt. We're only at best a year or two away, but the bond market will decide when that final disintegration is. $1 trillion plus every year, as I mentioned. 40% of everything the government spend is borrowed money. 10% of our economy basically is built on debt, on new debt every year. So only about 90% of the economy is real. The other 10% is unsustainable. And we can either fix that ourselves with reform, or we can let the market impose that on us very quickly. Because when you're consuming 10% more of than you're producing, you either have to consume less or produce more. There's no other way around it. You cannot consume more than you produce in the long run. You can only do it in the short run. Again, we've amassed $5 trillion worth of debt in the last 3 years. Unbelievable amount of debt. We've doubled the money supply. They're printing money constantly. And we still have 11% unemployment. And they're saying it's actually like 8.6 or 8.7, but that's a totally fake number built on pulling people out of the labor force, saying, oh, they're no longer part of the labor force. Which, if that's true, it's even worse. It's even worse than having 11% unemployment, because if those people really have given up permanently, then that's even worse than having 11%. But basically the number is 11%, much higher actually, if you go back to the old measures of unemployment from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But basically, despite all this, we're still at 11% unemployment, and the reason is that we have engaged on demand-side economics. We figure if we print money and run big enough deficits, that the economy will improve. And if that works in the short run, like it is now, we basically have a better economy than we would have had, but it's totally unsustainable. So basically, we're running these deficits just to keep the illusion going of prosperity. Because again, the basic point of economics is that you cannot consume more than you produce. Well, you say, well, how are we doing that now? And we're doing that now by borrowing from other countries. They're producing for us. Ships come in every day with all these goods that we're consuming, computers, cars, everything we're buying, basically all this plastic toys at Walmart, they're all coming in from China, and we're sending them treasuries. U.S. treasuries, U.S. debt is our biggest export by far. And as long as they take our dollars and sink us deeper and deeper into hock, they're content for a while. But after a while, they're going to not want our money anymore, and that's when you will see interest rates rise, because we're not producing. Foreign countries are producing for us, and we're sending them treasuries instead. But that cannot continue indefinitely. It's going to come to a very quick end at some point in the near future, unless, again, we embark on a pro-growth agenda with massive entitlement reform, instead of demand-side economics, which is a total failure. The whole idea of demand is meaningless without supply. Wealth comes from supply, from producing goods and services. That is wealth. Printing money is not wealth. You can print as much money as you want or as little as you want. The wealth will only be reflected on the amount of loaves of bread on the store shelf. And you can print all the money you want, it won't put more bread on the store shelf. You can borrow bread from somewhere else, but you have to pay it back, so you'll be poorer in the future. And people will not loan you real things for paper dollars indefinitely. So wealth comes from production. So we have to focus on production, because if you're living 10% beyond your means, you either have to consume 10% less, or you have to produce 10% more. Well, we know how to produce things. You need a low, predictable tax system to produce economics incentives for growth, but you also need to make regulation streamlined. And you can't be threatening businesses with redistribution and lawsuits and regulations and vilifying them. You need to understand that business is our friend. That's how we make our national money, our national paycheck. The wealth we have comes from production. Demand is a meaningless concept. Wealth comes from production. And so right now what we're doing is creating a massive deficit, trying to create deficit wealth. Deficit, the illusion of prosperity through printing money and massive deficits. And like I said, that won't continue. You have to create supply. Wealth comes from supply, business. And we're actually attacking those things right now. We're papering it over by deficits and printing money, which is why the economy hasn't recovered, and it won't recover in a meaningful way until we change course. And we're running out of time to do that. And I would say this is a disease that's not limited to the U.S. All of the big bloated welfare states, the socialist democracies of Europe, the United States, Japan, they're all going bankrupt. And this is happening very quickly. And the people, unless we change course when this happens, it's very hard to fix. Things are going to get very difficult in the United States. Hyperinflation, no jobs. It's going to be a prolonged period of crisis. And the people who are seen now as our political and economic intellectuals will be remembered as incredibly misguided people. Perhaps among the biggest fools in history, when you look at what they were doing to try to stimulate the economy, which doesn't work, has never worked. History shows that clearly. We're not in uncharted waters. Other civilizations and countries and other times and places have done the same thing with terrible results. We know where we're going to end up, or at least we should, and the fact that we're persisting on this path is very destructive and economically irresponsible and insane. So I just wanted to go over that without all the charts and technical explanations. I just wanted to talk with regular language that I think most people will understand intuitively. Thank you.